are so excited for everyone who is joining us this afternoon. So I hope that you have grabbed your favorite beverage, a treat of your choosing, and we really are just delighted to have you here.
Oh, I'm really excited to be here too. This is just one of my favorite things that
Mhm.
that we do. It's just so cozy.
It is, and
Yeah.
it's a nice way to either um, kick off in the middle of, maybe it's the very tail end of your holiday celebrations, depending on the time of year. So it's just very nice to sit and spend some time with one another.
And this may be one of the first times that we've done this where there's actually been snow on the ground.
I think so. I think for the most part,
Yeah.
we typically do it when it's cold, some years colder
Yeah.
than others, but
Yes.
still definitely just kind of that brown.
Hmm.
So it's very nice for us to be able to look out the windows here, see the snow on the gazebo and the carriage house and on the lilac bushes just outside the
Oh, yeah. I like
door.
it when it's kind of that clumpy on the
Yes.
branches. It just looks so pretty
I
and
know.
everything. Well, I'll tell you, it was a little harder for me to get over here today because when I got home from doing another event, I had a fire in my wood stove and it just wraps
Oh.
you up and makes you a little tired.
Well, I am so sorry that I pulled you away from that,
No,
but
but I'm always excited because you make such a beautiful table. We have some of the most beautiful china that was
yes,
donated by somebody, wasn't it?
yes.
And that is just so special.
I say, and you and I today are drinking some lovely chai tea, the Twinings chai tea. So
I love chai.
it is one of my favorites.
Thank you. Oh, and I have to apologize to our viewing audience. I'm kind of being a woman of loose morals today because only young unmarried women would have their hair down.
Yeah.
And I'm way beyond being young.
I say maybe by Victorian standards, because I think what is it that a spinster was by age, I think 26.
At least, yeah, if not younger, yeah.
So it is just truly the ages that they come up for those people is
I
um
know.
a little insulting in this day and age, I think.
Yes, yes.
So we have our lovely green teapot here. Some pour myself some water and some for you
Thank you.
as well, making sure to not burn my guest.
Thank you so
There
much.
we go. We also have some chocolates, some little cucumber sandwiches, some bundt cakes. But we are so excited that you
And
all
our fake
joined.
ham.
And our fake ham. Yes, the fake ham is once again making an appearance front and center, along with, oh, I meant to turn this to the other side. We have some fake oysters on this side of the table as well, because the Victorians really liked shellfish.
They did.
So we will go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, feel free to place them in the chat. We're monitoring it from this end, but otherwise, we are so excited for you to be joining us.
The tea people are drinking today.
Yes, I say feel free
And any little snacks.
feel free to pop your menu as well into the chat, what you are sharing with us today. So we're going to kind of start at the very beginning with a long history of tea. I know for us here in the United States, we typically associate tea with England and high tea, but it really has its origins in a very specific place in the world. In fact, it has the intersection of the latitude of 29 degrees north and 98 degrees east.
That's very specific.
It is very specific. This is the area of the world where we see China, Tibet, northern Myanmar, northeast India, all kind of meeting in that region. And I'm sure you've gone shopping for tea many times. You walk down the tea aisle. There's so many different varieties, but true tea all comes from the same plant.
Okay.
So if you're looking at an herbal tea, that is not tea.
So it's not technically a tea. So is chai technically a tea?
Chai is because it is made with black tea.
Okay.
And it is really the differentiation between black tea, white tea, oolong tea, is all when you pick and how you dry the plant. So it is all from camellias. I'm butchering
So
the
a green tea is the same as a black tea, just harvested at a different time.
correct. So green teas tend to be a little bit younger. They actually have a little bit more like natural caffeine in them sometimes I've seen, just like it's more potent, but then how it dries, it isn't developed as
Okay.
much, versus the fact that they allow the black tea leaves to dry out a little bit longer. They get the caffeine in it changes.
So with that constant, as it dries, it would concentrate the
Mhm.
flavor a bit.
It does. And like I said, the plant is all the Camellia sinensis. And like I said, it is all from that corner of the world. And so from that very small region, it spreads across to the entirety of the world.
Well, now as a plant person, I'm going to have to research a little bit more because is it the same as camellia, the flower, the same? I wonder.
I don't believe it
Hmm.
is.
It's kind of curious, isn't it?
It is that you're because chamomile teas are an herbal tea. That much
Yeah.
I do know.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see that they are so similar. I had the same thought too when I was looking at this, but it comes specifically the legends from China. There was this emperor Shen Nong, and I apologize for anyone who speaks Chinese and the butchering of that pronunciation. He put out a decree that everyone had to boil the water they were drinking. Um, and whether or not that had to do with for any health reasons, they
Yeah,
don't really
I'm
go.
wondering if a place got sick and they found that the boiling the water helped.
I don't know, but so sometime around 2737 BC. So
Quite a long
a
time
very
ago.
long time ago. So the records that we have don't get quite into the specifics, but I have to imagine that it is for some reason
would
like
imagine.
that they realize
Mhm.
that by boiling the water makes it better, can purify it. Because humans, we're a pretty smart bunch once in a while.
Mhm.
And so the idea is that he was sitting under a tree. There's a beautiful breeze that comes by, and he has a few leaves that blow into the tree or into
Into his pot.
his
Mhm.
pot.
Yeah.
And it changes the taste, it changes the color. He still continues to drink it, which that's kind of why this goes into legend and not necessarily true fact.
Mhm.
Because I don't know if I would just continue to drink water that had changed color after a plant had blown into it. But he is obviously a far braver man than I.
Right.
Uh,
And probably liked the flavor. I went,
yes.
let's try it more.
And so he was surprised by its flavor and restorative properties. And then from there, just kind of started experimenting with the different medicinal properties. It says that he also tested various herbs on himself, which I do have to think he probably found other people to test those because,
Mhm.
from my knowledge of political and royal figures.
Right. You wouldn't want to accidentally off yourself.
Correct. And I know there's the idea that they used to have a royal taste tester whose job was to, if the food was poisoned, you're gonna go first before the king. And so I really do have to imagine that there's
I think
some
you're
wiggle
right.
room. That's why they do call it a legend and not
Right. But there's like little grains of truth in it.
absolutely. So there's definitely
Or little leaves of truth.
yes, the grain is reserved for rice in this
Yes.
case. But it's so fascinating to think that from this very humble beginning, how it spread throughout the years through,
Yeah.
just the trade that
And
it
affected
happened.
the world economy.
It truly did. I mean, you think all the
Yeah.
way back. I had the opportunity. I got to visit Boston this summer and got to see a lot of the Boston Tea Party spots along the
Yeah.
way. And so just the far-reaching back of our little corner of history related to tea and how it impacted us was really, really fascinating to get to see. And I mean, we'll learn more about this as we continue to chat, but tea really has had staying power as the morning beverage of choice amongst all the people who are here.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to jump forward a bit in history. We're going to jump up to the 1800s from
Well, that's a 2,000-year leap.
I say absolutely getting close to almost a 4,000 year leap,
Yeah.
truly.
Yes.
And a
Oh, that's right,
sinking
because it was
2,000 years
2000.
beat.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, quite a ways and we are jumping to a sinking feeling, which is not something we ever want to have.
No.
But we can trace the tradition of tea time, your afternoon tea, your little pick me up, back to this woman, the Duchess of Bedford. She was married to the seventh Duke of Bedford, Anna Maria Stanhope. And she would say that she would always feel a sinking feeling between the noon and evening meals.
There could be kind of a big gap in between some of those meals.
Absolutely. So, when do you typically have your evening meal on any given day?
Oh, I'm a night owl, so my schedule is really wacko. So I may not, I may have lunch at 2 or 3, and then I don't eat again until maybe 8, 9, sometimes 10. So I'm really weird.
So you would be having your evening meal the same time that these people would be having their
But
evening
I
meal.
do get that little sinking feeling, and I probably graze on things that I probably shouldn't.
I'm the same way.
Yes.
But unlike you, where you have your afternoon meal at like 2 or 3 o'clock,
Mhm.
they had a noon meal. So they're going from noon until 8 p.m. And the Victorians and the Regency, there were a lot of societal rules. There were a lot of ways that you had to interact with the world around you. So popping down to the kitchen and making yourself a snack or a sandwich was not necessarily the most proper. And if you are someone who is of the lower class, you probably have other things that you need to be doing during the afternoon. And so you would not necessarily have the time to, especially if you're working in the kitchens of someone else, they probably would frown down on you, maybe making yourself a snack as well.
Yeah.
So she had these sinking feelings and decided that in the afternoon she was going to have a little bit of a pick me up. So this actually started in her summer home. She wanted to spend time out in the field. And now, when I say her summer home, we're not actually talking all terribly far away from London, but this is still when the large country estates hadn't quite been swallowed up by, the expansion of the metropolis.
Now, so the people at that time, they were drinking tea.
Yes.
But to have an actual formal time set aside for it, we can go back to Anna Marie.
Absolutely. So she would take a basket of sweets and go and have an afternoon promenade out in her fields on her country estate, would stop and have a little bit of a picnic. She would invite her friends who were in the neighborhood as well to join her, because these were women of leisure.
She kind of created a movement. So could we call her an influencer of today?
We absolutely could call her an influencer. And in fact, she was an influencer of the biggest influencer of the time.
Who was?
Queen Victoria. So she kept it when the Duchess of Bedford went back to her kind of winter, when court was called back into session. So the nobles would go out to their summer estates, enjoy some time away from court, and then court would be called it back into session, and they would all come back to the Queen's side. Typically, this would, by now we're in kind of London proper. Gone truly are the days of like Henry VIII and the Tudor courts that would just travel from castle to castle. We're pretty much now centralizing just in London. And she decided that she wanted to continue this when she came back into the city. And it was introduced to the Queen. And the Queen can never do anything by half. And
no, more is more.
More is more. So she started throwing receptions. So in fact, we have a picture of Queen Victoria is on the far right. She is the shorter woman in this picture, and two of her relatives are sitting with her, and they are enjoying their spot of afternoon tea.
Isn't it fantastic that they actually have a photo of that?
They do, and it shows you that they wanted to capture the people who were wealthy at the time. So this is definitely a little bit later. We see the tea receptions really start in like 1865, and this would be like 200 people coming to the palace, having afternoon tea, having a huge feast and spread.
I'm kind of curious about the guys on either side. Look at that.
Yeah, so we think that this photo was probably taken in India, as
Yeah.
this is part of the India was part of the British Empire at this point.
Yeah.
And so these are likely two Indian gentlemen servants who are serving her at this time. But we can tell by the sleeves that this is more while Victorian, probably getting towards the later years
Yeah.
of her life. It does look like she does have black trimming and piping, meaning that likely
She was still in mourning.
she was in mourning for Prince
Albert.
Thank you. And
Mhm.
so it shows though that there was always time for a spot of tea and that they're going to make the time to sit down and kind of have that afternoon meal. And typically this would happen between 4 and 7 p.m., depending on the day's schedule, how long they wanted to spend in conversation with
Yeah.
one another. We also see here is Queen Victoria with Prince Henry of Battenberg in the Oak Room at Windsor Castle. And so once again, she has servants in the back room. She is towards the end of her life again. If you can see, she's sitting right in the
Yeah,
center.
1896, yeah.
So she is very much so still in full mourning at this point. She actually does sweetly mourn Prince Albert her entire rest of her life,
Yeah.
where the expectation might have been for her to find another husband. She determined that that was not what she wanted to do.
Mhm.
But we can really see how it impacted her. And it all is thanks to, that Duchess of Bedford, Anna.
Well, God love her. Amen.
Absolutely. And the queen, like you said, an influencer of the time. And so you had to be someone pretty well up to and have a good idea to truly influence the queen at this time.
Yeah.
So, but that brings us to some of my favorite people to talk about, the Hills.
Because
So
we have a connection with them.
we do. So the Hills lived in the very house that we are sitting in. So they also have a bit of a connection to Queen Victoria as well, as they are English.
Yes, so they would have brought their tea love over here.
Absolutely. And so we have a beautiful family picture that was actually taken right here in the backyard. And so we have George and Annie. Annie is the woman in the hat. George is sitting directly next to her. Annie's real name was Sarah.
But she went by Annie.
But she went by Annie. And in fact, she went by Grandma Annie.
Grandma Annie.
They loved her so much in this community. So it really shows that they just kind of entrenched themselves.
They're buried here in Lombard, yes? Or no?
They're buried in Elmhurst, so not very far.
Elmhurst?
Yes.
Okay, so
Their youngest son, who tragically died young, is buried here in
she is
town.
buried.
So they are still very present though, but they would absolutely have had afternoon tea probably in this very room that we're sitting in their back parlor, which would have been used for dining, for meeting and visiting with friends. It also has the incredible mantle that is behind us, and would have really been one of the social hubs
And
of
you know,
the house.
if you have never been in this home, you really need to come over and see this fireplace, because when they were doing the restoration, it had been covered up for a long time.
Yeah.
And they uncovered it, and it's just absolutely fabulous.
It's one of the highlights of the house, and especially right now it's decorated to the nines for Christmas. And so we're able to, talk about such wonderful things like afternoon tea because of the Hills legacy.
I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe this summer we should have a little garden tea party in the backyard to celebrate that.
Possibly.
If you would be interested in something like that, let us know.
And George was no slacker too. So while Annie, she had many social calendar engagements that she wanted to join in, George was a chemist who actually worked for the local soap factory here in town.
Right.
So we can definitely see that they were busy and would have wanted to enjoy.
A lot of people don't know that Lombard has this huge soap connection too.
It really does. There's lots of kind of interesting things that we're able to connect with. And a lot of the traditions that they would have had for Christmas here comes from the Victorian era. So I think the one that we all think of, at least I think of the most during Christmas, is Oh, Christmas Tree.
Oh, yes. And, I am so glad that Queen Victoria married a German.
Yes.
Because without that, his tradition of bringing Christmas trees into the home would not have happened, because when
Mhm.
he brought it into the palace and it was all of a sudden Victoria has it, everybody wanted to have the Christmas tree. I have about 13, 14 Christmas trees in my house. I love Christmas trees.
That is
Obsessive?
a little bit. I say you said it, not me, but I love it. But the image you're seeing on your screen, this is from the a lithograph that they made that was published throughout the British Empire that shows Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and their children decorating a Christmas tree.
You know, the other thing I like about this is that image right there. That Christmas tree is on the table.
It is on the table.
And here at the Victorian cottage, in this back parlor, we have a Christmas tree on a table. We also have one in the front parlor. It's on the floor, but on the table.
The table is where they would put them.
Yeah.
You especially we see during this time period, this is when we get this huge ramp up with Christmas traditions. Kind of in the Tudor period, which is, you know, a little pretty much just the one period right before this.
Well, thanks to Charles Dickens.
Exactly.
Because without him, it still would be considered a minor holiday.
It really was. And we see people would celebrate. They would, you know, do the 12 days of Christmas, the celebrations through those. That would be kind of the one time that you would take a break through the year. But once they were done, you know, you celebrated the birth of Jesus Christ, you celebrated the Epiphany. It was very much so a religious holiday versus today. It has shifted, at least in the general populace, kind of away from that. And so one of the things that we really see is this idea, though, with the Victorians of being patient. And the season of Advent.
Well, the season of Advent traditionally was a time of penance. So it had a longer time. That's why when we have the Advent candles, we have the purple. Purple was a color for passion and waiting and longing. And then when you would, and there would also be very, very sparse decorations. It was very, very sedate. And it wasn't until Christmas Eve when even people would bring their trees in and decorate them that night. And when you think about how they would light them, it was with candles.
So it's probably a very good thing that they did not bring them in, because today we have fake electric candles to give the illusion. But they did not put electric Christmas lights on their trees for probably really until like the 30s, 40s.
Yeah, you put those trees in your home, and a lot of times back then they were heating their homes with wood stoves, with fireplaces, very, very dry. Your tree would dry out. You don't want to put a candle near that. So you brought that tree in as close to Christmas Eve. You could put the candles on that night, but that was pretty much it.
That was. And you also have to remember at this point, especially in the early Victorian era, they're decorating with handmade paper ornaments.
Yeah, a little flammable.
Just a little.
Yeah.
We had children coming in earlier today who made their own paper ornaments to put on our tree in the front, and they were aghast. They could not believe when I told them that they used to put actual, you know, candles. So we are teaching the youth very well that paper and fire are not meant to meet.
Nor dry trees.
Nor dry tree. But it was the idea, you know, with Christmas today, it is very much so, I don't know about you, but it feels like everything falls within like the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. But the Victorians really stretched it out. So with the stockings were actually opened on St. Nicholas Day. And that was one of the earlier days in the Advent season, which is December 6th.
And, you know, we always think of the stockings hung by the mantle. A lot of times they were just on the end of the bed. Depending on where you lived, that one of the traditions was to put it at the end of your bed.
Which I cannot imagine if you were a parent who was helping Santa and you had to be the one to deliver the gifts from St. Nicholas into the stocking.
Yes, or the shoe.
How careful and quiet and delicate you would need to be putting things into the stocking.
And, you know, I think when we think of like all the little toys and stuff, there may have been a toy or something, but a lot of times it was an orange or some nuts, because, you know, we just take it for granted that we can go to the store and get an orange.
Yeah.
But back then, this was really an extravagance to get an
It
orange.
really was. Well, they even talk about, I came across this one account of you'll notice that kind of at the place setting that is closest to you, that there is a flower decorated there. And this one woman talks about, she remembered the greenery that they would bring in. Her mother would keep a flowering plant alive all fall and kind of the winter season leading up. So that way she could decorate her each place setting with a bloom, which really does show kind of I mean, we just passed the winter solstice, this
Yeah.
idea of rejuvenation and the turning of the seasons of the year, and that life is coming, the spring will
It will.
soon be here.
Yes, the cold will
The
pass.
cold will pass, yes. But it is truly this idea of being patient and stretching out this waiting. And so the
Mhm.
Victorian time really is when we start to see this shift away from the very kind of somber, reflective
Mhm.
time to more a more commercialized. The Victorians start to have more money. A lot of people see the emergence of the middle class.
Mhm.
And,
And
we
manufacturing practices also helped
Mhm.
us. Postage helped with all of that. The
Absolutely.
ease of being able to mail something. So there's so many things that go into the making of what we have today.
And there's a lot of pieces that are still very familiar to us, including a Christmas menu.
Calories, don't even talk to me.
They
Just eat it and eat it.
they do not count because it is meant to be over the top and decadent, and you've gotten to the midpoint of the winter. It is slowly going to be shifting, and they have some very
Yeah.
interesting recipes.
And a lot of times too, it's like you get to a certain point and you're going to have to start eating some of this stuff because some of your ingredients might be starting to go bad.
Yes, they did not
Yeah.
have the blessing of refrigeration that we have today.
Yes.
And so that's where we get to see things like your Christmas pudding. A lot of those early recipes are coming out of the need to preserve your food. Now, Kim here makes a wonderful Christmas pudding that is definitely not as time intensive as
No, no, no,
traditional.
no, 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 no. But I think it tastes
It
wonderful.
does.
But definitely it's not one of those things that takes days and days.
No, a traditional Christmas pudding, because they're one, it includes suet, which
Yeah, no.
is lard's like older sibling. And we also are seeing that they're steaming it for days and hours. So you put it together and you're supposed to like feed it brandy or another like kind of Christmas spirit over an entire month
Mhm.
and leave it in a dry place. And that's one of the ways that you're able to reconstitute all of the dried fruits and nuts that go into the cake. And then you steam it one time, keep feeding it. And then about a day before you actually want, or the day you want to serve it, you steam it another 2 hours,
That thing has to be so potent.
which
But of
is,
course, it's steaming a lot of the alcohol out. But
it is. But the steam can only do so much, which is part of the reason that it becomes so flammable. I've seen other accounts where, today if we want a lighter Christmas pudding, you spoon a little bit of the
the
brandy on
Mhm.
top, and that's what gives you that beautiful flambe effect, which is what makes it a showstopper. That's why people put it on the table because it is
Mhm.
so just beautiful to see.
It's-
But there are some accounts where you only needed to put a tiny bit on there and it would burn for like 5 minutes because there was so much liquor still in there. And then, of course, there's the debate between custard and sauce going
Yeah.
on your pudding. And so it's just, even today, especially across the pond in the UK, we see that this is such a wholesome and traditional piece that is really carried on through the
This just
years.
reminded me of eggnog. My grandmother would make brandy that had a little bit of eggnog in it. Yeah.
That's how I make my mimosas most of the time. But
Oh.
I love that. And, that's not the only showstopper they have. So, especially once we see how food production changes, one of the things that was really popular at this time is gelatin. And we're talking,
They did it on everything, like aspic, as there was, yeah,
yeah, and we're
everything.
talking like, today you can go to the store and you can buy unflavored gelatin that is fairly easy. You dissolve it, you have the gelatin sheets.
Mhm.
The gelatin of the Victorian era, you are having to like distill yourself, and it
Yeah.
creates that lovely kind of funk
Uh-huh.
to it. But one of the things that they would use is they would add it into things like cream roses. So one of the things we have on the screen here is it's a strawberry puree. You would have real roses in there, and you mix that in with gelatin and heavy cream. So that way you can pipe it onto a little tartlet shell, and it would set up and it would hold this shape.
It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and you can see where that would be resplendent on a
Yeah.
Christmas table.
Yeah. And with the rose, it's kind of a nice
Hmm.
smell to it. You'd forget that it had gelatin in it.
Exactly. And it's got the fresh strawberries in
Yeah.
it too. So the reason though that you wouldn't want to do that with just say a buttercream is their Christmas meals have course after course
Course.
after course. And especially even if you are someone who's working in the kitchen, you want to time out things. So as many things as you can do in advance
Mhm.
is very nice. And they don't have the same refrigeration as I said that we do.
You think they had napping rooms? Man, all those
Oh,
courses. I mean, I
I
think of us after a big dinner and just want to lay there.
you know what? I am sure that they had a lot of fainting couches being
I
used after
bet.
their meals.
I bet.
But the gelatin would hold it up because if you just do buttercream, even in the winter, it will start to melt
Yeah.
and lose its definition as well. But then the other thing we have on the screen here are frosted grapes.
Oh, aren't they pretty?
They're gorgeous. And so the traditional way to make these is you actually take two egg whites,
Hmm.
you whip it up, not quite super frothy, but enough that it'll have some air incorporated and make sure that it's all mixed together. And then you would coat the grapes and then coat them in the egg whites and then coat them in sugar. And it creates that beautiful kind of
It
frosted
does.
effect.
It really does. They're real pretty.
And it's just another way that they would add to the meal. So a frosted grape, they might also have at a summer event. They might do one of these. Definitely not the Christmas pudding because that would take
Right.
the entire month. That's another great lesson in patience. So you would
Oh,
all
right.
work together. And that was actually a way that a lot of people would kick off their holiday season. The idea was that you have everyone who is planning on eating it, or at least everyone who's in your household, give the mixture a stir for luck. Uh,
And you had to stir a certain direction too,
and
didn't
you
you?
had to
Yeah,
stir it.
there was a whole
It was a
tradition with it.
it, and the each family. It seemed like each family almost had their own of like because there was a couple contradictory
Okay.
accounts of which way you needed to turn
Whether
it.
it was clockwise or
Clock or
counterclockwise.
folding
Yeah.
it in or making a
Yeah.
star or turning around and doing the hokey pokey it seemed like,
Yeah.
but they would also hide a sixpence for wealth in there.
That could be a tooth breaker.
Absolutely could be a tooth breaker. So they luckily you all knew that it was in there, so you probably did a little
We're
bit of digging
digging.
around and you're
Yeah.
not just like
Yes.
chomping down on whatever piece. Hopefully to try and find the piece yourself.
Yeah.
But these traditions were just, especially around food, were just delightful to kind of see. And of course, they would then also have traditional courses. You're going to have, if you're Queen Victoria, you're going to have swan.
Hmm.
Because and especially at that point, she owns all the swans in England, so she can do with them what she would like. Because she's too good for goose, of
Yeah.
course.
Yes.
We also would have things like turtle soup, oyster soup.
I was just thinking too, it's like the long preparation for a
Mhm.
meal. If you were a person that wasn't as elevated in status, and maybe you didn't have as much money,
Mhm.
to be able to do a little bit and a little bit to be able to pay for that meal,
Yeah.
to stretch out the bills for that meal over a whole month versus this week.
This week, yes. Well, I know even in my family today, we started grocery shopping for Christmas, I think probably 3 or 4 weeks ago with the things like
Mhm.
we do a spread of cheeses and charcuterie and like some other like cured and smoked
Yeah,
things. We started buying those a week like right after Thanksgiving because those will keep. And then you're
yeah,
right, you don't get a $500 grocery bill, which
in one day. Yeah.
yeah, which
Ugh.
some of those very premium cuts of meat, which is what we all want to do to enjoy the
Mhm.
season, those have definitely
Yeah.
can be expensive. So
Yeah,
you
and
can
that is, it's a time of year we try to give our finest to our
exactly.
family and to our friends.
And the Victorians did absolutely the same way. And so we even see that, not with our just our food, but also with the shopping that we
Hmm.
do. So we have the image that's in color is the interior of the Vermont Country Store. And then we also have a Woolworth's 5 and 10 store.
Yeah,
So
isn't that just charming? There is a meat market in Indiana, Dreyer's Meat Market. I don't know if anybody knows of it.
yeah, I don't.
And it still has a wood stove in it and sawdust on the floor, and it is just absolutely charming. And I have to tell you, Woolworths, I still think about there's a diner in the back of Woolworths when I was a kid.
Oh,
My
really?
grandmother would take me to the Woolworths. Yeah,
Oh, I love
yeah,
that. I know it's especially like I said, we had kids coming through the house earlier and the idea that there was a 5 and 10 store,
yeah.
not quite understanding that it was 5 and 10 cents and not $5 and $10,
Right.
which would have
Well,
been
now the Dollar Tree's is what, $1.25 now? I don't
I
know.
know it's insane, but we really would see that, especially around this time of year, and especially in the Victorian era, that production for anything that wasn't related to Christmas does kind of start to grind to a halt a little bit. People
Mhm.
who are able to want to spend more time with their parents or their families, but we see places like the toy stores, confectionaries, those truly start to ramp up production,
Mhm.
especially this kind of around like the 1870s or so. And we're starting to see the centralization that happens in department stores does start spreading out across the country. Because, we think of the Christmas idea with the department store displays and everything, but they would have similar displays in rural country stores too.
Mhm.
And so they would,
And what I loved about these little shops and everything before everything got so big is that you knew your butcher.
hmm
You knew the person at the dry goods store,
yes,
and you also kind of knew some of the little tricks about how to order things as well.
absolutely. And they would know those things too. And so they would stock, you would see the oranges that were the exotic fruits at the times, even
Mhm.
things like coconuts would start to appear. So we are starting to see kind of the
Pineapple.
pineapple, things that were from far off reaches
Mhm.
are slowly
The
starting to come in.
exotics.
They would also have pyramids of nuts like walnuts at the counter. They would hang the toys from the ceiling. So it would be a pleasantly overwhelming experience walking
Mhm.
into any of these
Oh yeah.
stores.
Sensory overload.
Yes, absolutely. And we really see that even like going, with the Woolworths, the 5 and 10 stores. And of course, we also see that there is something for everyone with the department stores
Mm.
displays. I mean, especially here in Chicago, you
Oh
can't think
yeah.
Christmas without thinking Marshall Fields.
Absolutely. And how many times people would that would be a big trip.
hmm
We are going to go downtown and we're going to see the windows.
Yeah, so the photo that is on the left, that is from the 1870s or 1890s, I believe. And that is the display outside of Marshall
I
Fields.
have to say, this week I actually had a little thought in my head when I was out shopping. Can you imagine those people thinking what they would think about us today? There's people that actually go out in public in their pajamas to go shopping.
I
And look how everyone is
they
dressed in this.
they are dressed to the nines.
Oh
I
my
don't know if the
goodness.
Victorians would know what to do with themselves if they popped
No,
forward in
I'm
time and
sure
saw
a
us.
lot would be turning over in their graves right now. And
Probably.
I love that tree. Look, I mean, to
hmm
be able to get something in that atrium that's just so huge and fabulous. I mean, talk about more is more.
Exactly. And so one of the things that the department stores wanted to do is they wanted to become everything. So they wanted to have post offices so you could buy your package with them and send it. If you were visiting from out of town, just send it straight to your home. Or if you're
Yeah.
buying for someone else, send it directly to them. They would have barber shops. They would
And a lot of
have.
these also would they would have the little mail slot
Mhm.
so that you could actually mail it from the building.
Exactly. And so they, some of them even would have hotels associated with them, especially if they're, in a destination of places like Chicago, or you think, your Macy's in New
Mhm.
York. And they truly wanted to, in that very commercial spirit, capture you inside.
Of course.
And so one of the things that if they're trying to keep you in there for as long as possible, they are going to have
Well,
tea
and with
rooms.
the walnut room.
They're going to
Oh my
have a
gosh.
place for tea in the walnut room. And so this
Hmm.
is still obviously a very iconic Chicago tradition that we have today, but they started it to really be that idea of you can sit with us. You can have some places even back in the 1800s would have wine. They would have couches where you could go and take naps and relax. And like I said, have a refined meal. Now,
And it's really does them, to create something that you want people to think of you as a tradition so that
mhm.
they keep coming back and keep coming back.
I know for a fact that as soon as they open up the Christmas reservations, they are gone the same day
That
for the
same day.
walnut room. I
Mhm.
will say there is a little cheat that they do have a bar in the walnut room that does accept walk-ups, and you can get the same menu there. It's obviously not quite in the seat and you're not at a
Mhm.
table, but I highly suggest trying that. This, though, is where we get a little confused as Americans
Mm.
because when I say high tea as an American,
Yes.
this is what I think of. I think of a nice table with the china, with lots of little sweets. And
Grander.
yes, it is high society, is what we
Hmm.
have equated it to.
Hmm.
Our brethren across the pond in England would say, "You silly Americans, you have gotten it wrong."
Because high tea is actually kind of simple. It's
It is.
surprisingly simple.
It
We think of it as being loaded table.
groaning under the weight of everything.
They are thinking literally a high table.
The height. So Kim and I are currently at high tea, in both senses, I would say, because we
Hmm.
are sitting here at a high table. We have
Loaded our table
loaded our
with
table.
our fake ham.
Absolutely. But this would be very similar to what the British high table would be. It would be also called kind of a meat or cheese. So they're having a little bit heavier of a meal, versus low tea,
Yes.
which that is when you.
So they have this, we have like these beautiful cucumber sandwiches. So this would be more of the high tea,
Yes.
whereas what we kind of tend to do is we walk by the cupboard and grab a chocolate out of it.
Yes. And
Just
so
gotta have this.
please do. And so with the low tea, that is really when we think of like the coffee room, or the coffee table rather. And so it is when you are sitting typically on a couch. You might have a piece of bread and butter. I've seen,
On
especially
a coffee table.
on a coffee table where you are sitting, and it's serves the same purpose truly as far as the social aspect. You're wanting to spend time with family and friends,
Mhm.
catch up, maybe gossip a little bit, if you're so inclined. But low tea was typically reserved for being in the home, and we don't really have a good equivalent here in the United States, typically, especially because we are coffee drinkers.
Mhm.
I have never heard the phrase someone, say under the words low
Low
coffee.
coffee,
That's
low coffee, high
low
coffee.
coffee just makes me think of you're low at the diner and need the lovely waitress to
Yes.
come and top you off.
Give me a heater.
Exactly. And so
So
we
do you know, would they typically have high tea in the front parlor?
they might. And so that would be probably not in this house because they only have one table in here. So it would
Mhm.
actually probably be more likely to have low tea in the front parlor. But they still might have some of those resplendent kind of like little sandwiches and things. They might have a tea
Mhm.
tray that has your sweets, your sandwiches, but it's served on the low coffee table, and maybe not quite as extravagant. It would definitely not be meat and cheese. You wouldn't need a fork and knife for it.
Now, would they, if you were just by yourself, you would probably have like low tea, or
It really
depends where which house.
It depends on the house. And so, and what the purpose is. Are you looking for just to combat that sinking feeling until it is time for your evening meal where you're going to have something a little bit heavier, where you're going to have meats and cheeses? You think of probably the diet of a duchess, that she's probably not eating light in any meal. And so she would absolutely probably have something more akin to a low tea, especially if you're thinking back when she's taking a picnic out. Or is it someone who is just getting off of the job for the day or coming home from school and they want to have something a little bit more substantial? And so they're going to sit and have their tea with Maria, like a meat and cheese kind of sandwich. So I can see why we got confused, because especially with our connotations with high society, and especially with
Absolutely
us divorcing ourselves. I talked about that Boston Tea Party. We pretty much made a very strong breakup from our tea drinking ways back then. And so once we kind of reintroduce ourselves back into that, we've absence has made the heart grow fonder after the American Revolution. We get a little bit lost in translation, or the Americans who might go overseas would see a high tea, or what they would associate with a high tea, and then try and bring that back this way. So it's a very lovely, kind of idea to sit and enjoy and celebrate, a special tradition during this time. And, especially with Victorian Christmas, we really do see that, the traditions of tea, at least for us, will carry us through the year and really embody what is lovely about this time of year, of enjoying the holiday spirit with something that will warm you both inside and out.
Absolutely.
So with that, does anyone, here's some of the sources that we used. And does anyone have any questions for Kim and I as we, kind of round off our evening here? You've all been delightful to sit and, sit and chat with. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our screen so that way Kim and I can become a little bit larger as we sit and chat.
Oh, I noticed you.
Oh, I didn't even mention our Christmas crackers that we have here on the table.
All right.
Oh,
ready?
Yes, and these ones will make a snap.
Okay.
So,
oh, the tab came off.
The tab came off. That's okay. We'll open it up.
We have another one. You want to try another one?
We do have another one here.
Let's do it. Let's try another go with this.
So Christmas crackers are, again, that lovely Victorian.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
There it goes.
Good pop. Ooh, and it does smell like a little bit of.
It does have a little bit of the gunpowder smell in here.
It does.
So these are also a very Victorian tradition. Oh, I got a little maze with a lion background to go through, as well as some jokes.
I think, and we have our crown.
And we have lovely purple, or at least I have a purple paper,
pink
paper crown that I'm going to set atop my head.
When I was coming into the building, I saw a couple of our guests that had been here earlier today were wearing the crowns. So did you use the crackers with somebody earlier
We
today?
did, yeah. So they're just, they're another way to embody that kind of Christmas spirit and that really, fun way. So these come from Thomas Smith is the person who is credited with inventing the Christmas cracker.
Oh, fun. Now, so these people that came in earlier, how did they do that? Did they call you and ask?
So we also do offer Christmas tours. So we are doing special holiday hours. So tomorrow and Monday, when we're normally closed, we'll be doing a tour of this house at 1, 2, and 3 o'clock. So you can come and see.
There's still openings?
There's still openings, absolutely. You can come and see the lovely decorations in person as well. And all the information for that can be found on our website, which is Lombard History.
So we have a couple of different museums.
Yes.
So we have the Sheldon Peck that is over on Parkside and Grace. And then we have the Victorian Cottage, which is on Maple.
Yes.
So The hours will shift depending on which museum you're at.
Yes. So, for example, the Sheldon Peck is actually closed because that is the oldest house in Lombard. It was built in the late 1830s, and it's got all the insulation of a house from the late 1830s.
It's chilly.
Yes.
It's very chilly. We have enough to keep the water from freezing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And then we have this one right here. Now, what are the hours for the Victorian cottage?
So the Victorian cottage, we have a tour at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock.
On which days?
Sunday.
For the like.
Yep, for the next 2 days. Normally during the summer, they're on Fridays and Saturdays. We're doing special holiday hours, so you can come
So
tomorrow.
If somebody had family in town and maybe it wasn't a regular hour, can they call and ask for a special tour?
Potentially, it really depends on staff availability at that time. I say our gift shop will be open as well with our Annie exhibit. That is from 10 to 4.
And we're starting to get wrapping up the year for the anniversary.
Yes. So that I say this house and the anniversary are only open for 2 more days.
Oh, so if you have people in town, get over here.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to do we have lots of different events. It's a venue where you can actually hire it out.
We've had someone get married in this very room. Which is very
sweet. So this is one of those things like it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do something, you wanted to show some people, your family from out of town, this place.
Yeah.
You could call and we can find out if we could fit you in.
Absolutely. I say, looking at it, it doesn't look like we have had any questions come in. No questions or comments, which is fantastic. But we have truly enjoyed spending an afternoon with all of you.
And I really enjoy spending an afternoon with you as well. It's always fun to do this.
We get lots of sweets. I get to drink tea and talk about some of my favorite,
And seriously, cucumber sandwiches make me think of spring. So that
I also
it's such a fresh taste.
We have lemon bundt cakes here because chocolate was just too cloying.
You're so little.
Yes.
So cute.
So we hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season. We hope that we get to see you soon. And thank you so much for being a part of our wonderful day.
And Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas. Have a
great... Or they would say Happy Christmas.
They would say Happy Christmas. Indeed. You have a lovely rest of your day. There is my... And we wish you all the best. Take care.
Bye-bye.